Today, I'm breaking down all 9 rules from this book, the actual framework Perkins lays out for how to do this without going broke or reckless. Rule 7 is the one most people get completely backwards, so stick around for that. Lesson 1. Maximize your positive life experiences. Perkins opens with a reframe that sounds simple, but most people never actually act on. Your life isn't measured by the number sitting in your bank account when you die. It's measured by the sum total of meaningful experiences you actually had while you were alive. If that's true, then the goal of earning and saving money isn't to grow a number for its own sake. It's to fund as many rich, memorable experiences as possible. He tells the story of Erin and her husband John, 2 successful lawyers in their 30s with 3 young children, who learned John had a rare, aggressive cancer. Nobody expects a healthy 35-year-old to be facing something like that. The diagnosis hit without warning, and within a relatively short time, the family's entire life was upended. Perkins uses this story early in the book deliberately, as a stark reminder that none of us know how much time we actually have, no matter how healthy or young we feel right now. His point isn't to make you anxious. It's to make you intentional. He wants readers to start actively thinking about the specific experiences they want to have in life, big or small, expensive or free, and to treat planning for those experiences with the same seriousness most people reserve for retirement account contributions. A life well lived, in his framework, is the result of deliberately collected experiences, not something that happens automatically once your finances are in order. Lesson 2. Invest in experiences early. This rule sounds obvious until you actually examine how most people behave. Perkins argues that your life is the sum of your experiences, and the richness you remember later comes specifically from things you actually did, not money you successfully avoided spending. The catch is that experiences, unlike money, don't just sit and wait patiently for you to get around to them eventually. A 25-year-old might be thrilled to go skydiving, backpack across a continent with friends, or take a financial risk on a passion project. That same person at 65 might have neither the physical ability nor the genuine desire to do those same things, even with plenty of money in the bank. Perkins calls this the way different life experiences have a kind of expiration date, often invisible, with nothing as obvious as a label telling you when the window closes. His advice is to front-load meaningful experiences earlier in life rather than assuming there will always be time later, because waiting often means the experience simply isn't available in the same form anymore, even if the money to pay for it eventually is. He's not suggesting reckless spending with no plan. He's pointing out that delaying joy in the name of being responsible often just means trading an experience you could have had at its peak value for a version of it, years later, that's worth far less to you, or sometimes not available at all. Lesson 3. Aim to die with zero. This is the rule the entire book is named after, and it's the most provocative idea Perkins puts forward. If money has zero value to you once you're dead, then dying with a large amount of money left unspent means you spent years of your life earning and saving something you ultimately never used for anything. Those hours, days, and years of work can't be recovered. If you die with $1 million left over, in Perkins' view, that's $1 million worth of experiences you simply didn't have, for no real benefit to you. He's upfront that hitting exactly zero is technically impossible, since nobody knows their precise date of death in advance. The real goal is getting close to zero, leaving just enough of a buffer that you don't risk running out of money while you're still alive, but not so much buffer that you die having needlessly underspent and underlived. This requires walking a careful line between 2 failure modes, spending too aggressively and risking running out, or staying too conservative and dying with unused wealth that could have funded a far richer life. Perkins frames this less as a strict mathematical target and more as a mindset shift. Instead of asking, how much can I accumulate, the better question becomes, how do I convert what I earn into the most meaningful life possible, without leaving the conversion unfinished when I die? That single reframe, he argues, changes nearly every financial decision that follows it, from how you save to how you think about retirement itself. Lesson 4. Use every planning tool available. Once someone accepts the idea of aiming for zero, the obvious next question is how to actually do that without gambling their financial security. Perkins doesn't leave this vague. He recommends using life expectancy calculators and actuarial tools to get a realistic, if imperfect, sense of how long you're likely to live, then building a personal survival threshold, the minimum amount of money needed to cover your basic needs for the rest of your projected life. This survival threshold becomes the floor you protect at all costs. Anything above that floor is what Perkins considers genuinely discretionary, Money that's safe to deploy aggressively into experiences without putting your basic security at risk. He's clear that this isn't about reckless optimism or ignoring risk. It's about separating your must-protect money from your free-to-spend and enjoy money so clearly that you're never confused about which bucket a given dollar belongs to. He acknowledges that no calculator or planning tool can perfectly predict a human life, since unexpected health events, market changes, or simply living longer than average can all throw off the math. But he argues that having an imperfect plan built on real data is still dramatically better than the default most people use instead, which is no real plan at all, just an open-ended habit of saving more, indefinitely, out of vague anxiety about an unknown future. Lesson 5. Understand the memory dividend. Perkins introduces a concept here that reframes why experiences matter even more than they first appear to. When you have a meaningful experience, you don't just enjoy it once, in the moment. You get to relive it afterward, through memory, for years or even decades, every time you think back on it, tell the story, or look at a photo. He calls this ongoing return the memory dividend, and argues it should be factored into how you value spending on experiences in the first place. This means an experience's true value isn't just what you felt during the event itself. It's the sum of that initial enjoyment plus every future moment you draw on it afterward. A trip taken with your children when they're young doesn't just create a nice weekend. It creates a memory both you and your kids will carry and reference for the rest of your lives, effectively paying out dividends for decades after the money was spent and forgotten. This concept also changes how Perkins thinks about legacy. Rather than measuring legacy purely in dollars left behind, he argues that the actual experiences and memories you build with the people you love, particularly your children, are a far richer form of legacy. Just as you're trying to maximize your own memory dividends, he points out, it makes sense to want your children to form their own rich memories of time spent with you, which is a return that money sitting untouched in an account can never generate for either of you. Lesson 6. Match your spending to your changing capacity for enjoyment. Perkins makes a case that most financial planning ignores something obvious once you say it out loud. Your ability to enjoy a given experience isn't constant throughout your life. It depends heavily on your health, energy, and physical capability, all of which generally peak in your 30s and 40s and decline afterward, even if your income and savings are still growing during those same years. Because of this, he argues it makes sense to deliberately spend more in earlier and middle adulthood, when your capacity to enjoy physically demanding or adventurous experiences is at its highest, and adjust your spending and saving balance accordingly rather than following a flat savings rate every year of your working life. Many financial plans assume spending should rise steadily with income, peaking near retirement. Perkins flips this, arguing your spending on certain categories of experience should often peak well before traditional retirement age, while your body and energy can still fully participate. This doesn't mean abandoning saving altogether in your 20s and 30s. It means consciously recognizing that a dollar spent on an adventurous experience at May 30th deliver far more lifetime value than the same dollar, grown through decades of compound interest, spent on a much tamer version of that same experience at 70. Money is flexible across time. Your physical capacity to enjoy certain experiences is not, and Perkins argues your spending plan should respect that difference rather than ignore it. Lesson 7. Give with a warm hand, not a cold one. This is the rule most people get backwards, because it directly challenges how inheritance and charitable giving are traditionally handled. The standard approach is to give nothing away while you're alive, accumulate as much as possible, and let your estate distribute everything after you die. Perkins calls this giving with a cold hand, and argues it's often a missed opportunity dressed up as prudence. His research found that the average age people actually receive an inheritance is around 60, an age where the money typically helps the least, since most major life decisions, like buying a first home, starting a family, or launching a risky business venture, have usually already happened by then, often without that financial support when it would have mattered most. When Perkins polled thousands of people on their ideal age to receive an inheritance, the clear winner was the range between 26 and 35, old enough to handle money responsibly, but young enough that it could meaningfully shape their life's trajectory. Giving with a warm hand means deliberately transferring money to children or to causes you care about while you're still alive to see the impact, rather than leaving it as a surprise after you're gone. This applies to charitable giving as well. Front-loading donations so causes benefit from your support now, while you're still around to witness and adjust your giving, rather than only after your death when you have no further say in how it's used. Perkins is clear this requires real conversations with your family and likely a financial planner or estate attorney, since giving away money early requires more deliberate planning than simply defaulting to a will. Lesson 8. Use time bucketing instead of a bucket list. Most people keep some version of a bucket list, a loose collection of experiences they hope to have someday before they die. Perkins argues this approach is quietly flawed in a few specific ways. It treats every experience as equally possible at any age, when we've already established that's not true. It creates no real urgency, since someday rarely arrives on its own. And it can breed complacency, letting people assume they'll eventually get to everything on the list without ever actually scheduling it. His alternative is what he calls time bucketing. Instead of one long, vague list, you group your desired experiences by specific life stage, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and so on, and commit to pursuing each one during the window when you're most likely to have the health, energy, or life circumstances to actually enjoy it. A physically demanding trip belongs in an earlier bucket. A slower, more reflective experience might belong comfortably in a later one. This isn't just an organizational trick. It forces a level of honesty that an open-ended bucket list avoids entirely. By assigning experiences to actual decades of your life, you're forced to confront how limited certain windows really are, and that confrontation is exactly what creates the urgency to act now rather than continuing to push things into an indefinite future that, statistically, won't be as accommodating as you'd like to assume. Lesson 9. Trade money for time when it matters most. The final rule addresses something Perkins sees as one of the most underused moves available to people in their middle years specifically. At this stage of life, many people find themselves with more money than free time, the opposite problem of their 20s, when they often had more time than money. Despite this shift, most people keep behaving as though time is still the abundant resource and money the scarce one, continuing to do chores and tasks themselves that could easily be outsourced. Perkins argues that once you have meaningful income, paying to reclaim your time, hiring help for cleaning, errands, or tasks that eat hours without adding meaning to your life, isn't an indulgence. It's one of the highest value purchases available to you, because it directly converts a resource you have in relative abundance, money, into a resource that's becoming increasingly scarce as your responsibilities grow, time and energy for the experiences that actually matter to you. He pushes this further into the idea of using accumulated savings to fund long-deferred dreams during these middle years rather than waiting for traditional retirement. If you've always wanted to write a novel, start a passion project, or take an extended trip, Perkins argues these years, when you likely have both meaningful savings and still strong health, are often the actual optimal window, not some date decades away. Replacing the fear of running out with intentional, well-planned spending now is, in his view, the entire difference between dying with regret and dying having genuinely lived. Closing. So if you take one thing from this video, take this. Money has zero value the moment you're no longer alive to use it. Every dollar you die with unspent isn't a sign of financial discipline. It's an experience you earned the right to have and never collected. Perkins watched friend after friend chase bigger and bigger numbers, well past the point where more money could meaningfully change their lives, right up until they ran out of the time or health to actually spend it. His entire book is an argument against letting that happen to you. Which of these 9 rules hit you the hardest? Let me know in the comments.